For years, I wanted a game that could actually make me feel like I was inside a kung fu film. When Sifu was announced, it had everything: brutality, elegance. What surprised me is how the game sells you the easiest story in the world: revenge. But then it spends the rest of the game asking whether you can let go of it. Everything begins with a flashback. You play Yang, an assassin. In the first minutes, you walk into a martial arts school, kill your old master, your Sifu, and leave a child for dead. And that child will become the actual protagonist of the game, revived by a mysterious talisman. 5 killers, 1 list, 1 life dedicated to making the pain mean something. But that story is a trap. Because Sloclap knows that revenge narratives are irresistible, they let us imagine violence as closure, and pain as something that can be erased if we only strike hard enough. And for a moment, just a moment, Sifu lets you believe in that fantasy. After the prologue, Sifu cuts to 8 years later. The game doesn't show you those 8 years. It doesn't need to. Walk around the hideout in the opening minutes. Everything here exists to serve your vengeance. And that's the first signal that something is off. Because in a traditional kung fu film, 8 years of training means discipline, balance, mastery. Here, it's just fuel. A body turned into a weapon with nothing else inside it. It's the story of someone who mistook obsession for purpose. Then the game introduces the 5 assassins with full theatrical flair. Silhouettes, titles, Shaw Brothers energy. 5 bosses, 5 levels, go. But look at how they're framed. They're tied together by damage. Each one is a person who broke somehow, who hit a moment of loss or failure and responded by becoming something worse. The aging mechanic is the central gameplay system of the game. This is the part everyone talks about and nobody actually gets. They treat it like a difficulty gimmick. It isn't. Here's how it works. Every time you die, you get older. Die once, age a year. Die again, age 2. The counter stacks. Reach 70, and the run ends permanently. If you played the game, you probably know the feeling. Reaching Sean, older than you wanted. Telling yourself the run is still alive, getting clipped once, then twice, then suddenly panicking because now every mistake feels irreversible. You're trying to salvage the run, trying to brute force. That feeling is the game's philosophy built directly into the health bar, and that's the genius of Sifu. Your first target is Fajar, a drug lord poisoning the city with purple mist. Clean villain, clean motivation, clean first mission. Fajar's element is wood, the first of the 5 movements in Chinese cosmology. Wood is spring, wood is growth, wood is the force that nurtures. And what does Fajar do with the element of nurturing? He cultivates addiction. He grows a plant that drains the community instead of feeding it. His greenhouse is overgrown, but none of it is alive in any meaningful sense. It's growth without direction. Power without ethics. Fajar isn't evil because he's greedy. He's evil because a natural force got warped inside him. For now, just notice this. You came here to kill a villain. Instead, you find someone who represents imbalance. Then comes Sean, fire element. And Sean is where the game stops hinting and starts pressing harder. If Fajar's level was a quiet rot, Sean's level is the opposite. It's a nightclub, strobe lights, pounding music, enemies swarming in waves. The game is escalating. Fajar was tense. Sean is overwhelming. Everything runs hotter, louder. The combat gets faster. The patterns get harder to read. You get hit more. You die more. You age more. and that's why he's such a clever boss. Sean represents fire stripped of discipline, a person who only knows how to intensify. And if you reach him in the wrong state, you fight exactly like him. You swing too early, you overcommit, you force openings that aren't there. You stop reading the fight and start trying to impose yourself on it. You're fighting the version of yourself that thinks force is the same thing as mastery. And Sifu keeps doing this. Boss after boss, it puts a distorted form of strength in front of you, then waits to see whether you'll recognize any of yourself in it. By the midpoint of the game, something has already happened to you as a player. You've learned that mashing buttons gets you killed. You've learned that the only way through a fight is to breathe, read the opponent, wait for the opening, parry instead of swing. Because underneath all the structure and style, the dame has been teaching you Wu-dei, the martial arts code of ethics. Wu-dei is the idea that martial skill without moral grounding, it's just violence with good form. It's the philosophy that says a true fighter is measured by restraint, not by how hard they can hit. And Sifu has been building Wu-dei into your muscle memory for hours. That's why the combat feels so different when it finally clicks. Boss fights stop feeling like walls and start feeling like conversations. Tense, violent conversations, sure, but still conversations. Most revenge stories flatter the fantasy. They tell you your anger is clarity. Sifu says the opposite. Anger is noise. Discipline is clarity. I'm trying to think of another revenge game that says that out loud, and I can't. Now it's time for bosses 3 and 4. Kuroki represents water. She runs an art museum. Glass cases, polished floors, a pristine exhibition of someone else's culture, displayed for paying guests. And then her boss arena drops you into a no theater, where she fights you in a mask in front of an audience that isn't really there. While she projects a serene exterior, she is hiding a violent and psychotic interior. She wields a bladed staff. Her attacks are sweeping and constant that keeps you at bay. Later the illusion shatters, and her inner turmoil is revealed. She drops the staff for kunai and fights with aggressive dashes. Her style shifts from a flowing river to a chaotic storm, showing how her repressed grief has turned into sharp, blinding rage. She's performing her grief, literally. Water is supposed to flow. Kuroki's version of it has frozen into ritual, beautiful and controlled, repeating the same shapes forever because the shapes are the only thing left she can trust. Her fight feels like that too. Graceful, then suddenly violent. Less like a brawl, more like trying to predict someone who stopped letting anything actually touch her a long time ago. Jinfeng is the opposite kind of stillness. She runs a corporate tower, top floor, skyline view, boardrooms full of artifacts she's bought. Her whole space is acquisition disguised as preservation. Chinese history reduced to a private collection because somewhere along the way she lost something irreplaceable and decided that if she could just hold on to enough of the past, maybe the laws would stop hurting. It doesn't work. It never works. You think she is protecting culture. Instead, she's building a shrine to her own grief. Metal is supposed to refine. Hers has hardened into something that can only cut. Jinfeng fights using a bell attached to a long chain. She stands with strict, rigid posture, barely moving her feet while swinging her weapon. Her entire fighting style is based on keeping you at a distance, reflecting her philosophy of controlling the player. And by the time you fought these 4 people, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Every boss is a mirror. Every mirror shows you a different answer to grief, and every answer is destructive. Growth twisted, fire weaponized, water frozen, metal hardened. So what about you? You've spent the whole game aging through your revenge, burning years to keep moving forward. What shape is your grief taken? That question hangs over the rest of the story, until you meet Yang. For most of the game, Yang is a shadow, the end of 8 years of preparation. The game has let you imagine him as whatever monster you need him to be, because that's how revenge works. The target has to be monstrous, or the revenge doesn't feel earned. And then you meet him, and it's not what you expected, at all.
我们是一家人。
He was your father's student, your senior, in a sense your older brother. Same school, same teachings, same code, same master. And just like the other bosses, his story begins with loss. His wife and child died. He begged your father to use the school's talisman, an artifact that could bring them back. Your father refused. Yang broke that code anyway, and in doing so, lost the only family he still had left. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it changes the shape of it. He became violent because he couldn't survive what had happened to him without trying to reverse it. 2 students, 2 different paths through grief. The difference is that Yang already crossed the line, you're still approaching. And here's where the prologue lands. You were Yang, you killed the master. The game told you that it was a tutorial. Turns out it was foreshadowing. In fact, it was both. You spend all this time hunting a murderer, and then you realize the real danger was never catching him. It was becoming him. And if you thought previous bosses were hard, Yang is on another level.
到头来，你还是我所认识的那个孩子。
Because he trained where you trained. He knows what you know. That's what makes him the final boss, as the most difficult one, but also because of his position. He's you, with the same education and a different answer. You beat Yang. You kill him. And Sifu gives you what should feel like victory, except it doesn't. Your father appears, and he's not proud of you. He's disappointed. Because for the first time, you understand what he actually wanted. He spent years training you to become a teacher, not a killer, a guide who could carry the school forward. He trained you to become a Sifu. The title of this game was never about your father. It was always about you, and you just failed the test. Sifu looks you in the face and tells you your whole mindset was wrong. And that's why the first ending feels so strange. Because you did it. You got revenge, and somehow you've still lost. This is where Sifu becomes something special. To get the true ending, you have to go back and spare every boss, and sparing them is harder, significantly harder, which is the whole point. The game refuses to let mercy be the easy option. Each boss has a stagger meter. Break it twice without killing them, and they yield. To do this, you need more control, more patience, less panic, less ego, less eager to end the fight as quickly as possible. Being good at violence is not the same thing as mastery, because by the time you can beat these bosses, you have learned the game. You can read attacks, you can parry, you can manage space, you can survive. But that only proves you're dangerous. It doesn't prove you're wise. That's the trap. Sifu lets you think mastery means winning the fight. If the boss is dead and you're still standing, you passed. But Wu Dai asks for something harder. Not just control over your opponent, control over yourself. The first playthrough asks, can you survive? The second asks, do you deserve to win? Every boss you spare learns something from you. Benevolence, righteousness, wisdom, propriety, integrity. And when you spare Yang, the final piece locks into place. You are breaking the cycle at the only point it can be broken. Yang killed your master. You set out to kill Yang. If you succeed, the cycle continues. Mercy is the only thing that breaks it. That's the part I love most about Sifu. On paper, this whole thing should be unbearable, and somehow Sifu avoids that. I think it's because the game earns its philosophy through player experience. Sifu trusts the player to arrive, and it works. Not perfectly. I don't think Sifu sticks every landing, and the pacing of the second playthrough is a hard sell for casual players. The game is asking you to replay with higher execution requirements to access the ending where the thesis actually lands, and I bet most players who bought Sifu never saw the true ending. But in a strange way, even that fits. Players who stop after killing Yang have a complete story, but it's a hollow one, which is exactly what the protagonist gets. Players who return and spare. They're the ones who finally understand what the game was asking from them. I just wish the game made that return trip a little more inviting. The first thing the game made you do was kill a master. The last thing it asks you to do is refuse to. 8 years of preparation, 5 assassins, 1 talisman, and at the end of all that, Sifu asks a brutal question. What if the real test was never whether you could defeat the people who hurt you? What if it was whether you could stop yourself from becoming one more wounded person passing that hurt forward? That's why the ending matters so much, because you finally understand what strength was for. The title was never about your father. It was about whether you could earn the right to replace him. And the only way to do that was to put your fists down. That's the lesson. That's the game. That's Sifu.